Hey, what's up? You're listening to the PVD Horror Podcast, and today we have a special interview episode. We're sitting down with Tucia Lyman, writer, director of Mom, Mothers of Monsters, and Bailey Edwards, who plays the main antagonist, Jacob. We're going to talk to them about kind of the creation of this project, their thoughts about the themes and plots of the movie, and whatever else comes to mind. So enjoy.
Hey, what's going on? This is Brandon.
Hey, this is Dave.
And this is Joshua. And you are listening to PVD Horror. And you are listening to PVD Horror.
Hey there, boils and ghouls. This is David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown himself from Terrifier and the upcoming Terrifier 2. And you're listening to PVD Horror. Kill ya later.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As we mentioned before, today we are joined with Tucia Lyman and Bailey Edwards, who are both involved in the movie M.O.M, Mother of Monsters. So Tucia, Bailey, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
All right. So I guess what I want to kind of, start us off with, but you guys can each take a turn. But I was thinking, Tucia, maybe you can start us off. Like, what is your connection to the horror genre, and like, what made you want to make a horror movie?
First of all, I think that horror movies and thrillers are kind of grossly underestimated with how powerful of a vessel they are and how much they can incite fear and dopamine and have people come back for more. And I think that I've always been a huge fan of horror films that kind of nest an underlining social theme. And, there's the big films that everyone knows about, like Parasite or Get Out, where there's underlining social themes. But I think that they have the power to kind of allow the viewer to shift their perspective, whether they're aware of it or not. And that's something that's always been super intriguing to me. And so I've always loved horror. I've always been a big horror buff. I've written, produced, directed a lot of television and a lot of documentary TV and paranormal shows. So I'm also a bit obsessed with the paranormal, although that's not what this film is about.
Sure.
But that was kind of my leg in, meaning I understood that world and I wanted to do something a little bit different than TV. And I wanted to make a horror film because it's my favorite genre.
Awesome. Bailey, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, to be totally honest, I was a super, super imaginative child. So actually the whole world of horror, absolutely terrified me. I was the kid who would see a poster for a movie in Blockbuster, rest in peace, we love her, and have nightmares for weeks and weeks on end. It would just run rampant in my brain. But we grow up, and I also, as I was a young actor and developing, and I sort of kept finding myself in playing more and more villainous characters. And there's something so delicious about playing someone evil, or someone flirting with evil, or someone, let's just say, playing with the dark side. And so when I first read the script and I first got introduced to Jacob, I was like, oh, I absolutely have to play this character. I'm so fascinated by these questions of good and evil, being born good, being born evil, nature and nurture, and what these sort of delineations we make in terms of what is a psychopath versus what is someone just doing bad things, and what brings people to do these terrible or not terrible, or not getting into spoiler territory, but yeah. I think anyone who's seen the trailer for this will know that things get a little wild, that this is a character that I absolutely sort of felt like I needed to play.
Awesome.
That's awesome. So Bailey, I'm going to kind of jump right into that, what we were just talking about. So now, was your dad, Anthony Edwards, a big influence on your acting career?
It's interesting. My dad is my sort of biggest hero, toughest critic, all rolled into one. And I think that, it's very, I guess the short answer is really, I grew up knowing that there's this world that my family was a part of and that I love to perform. But I also knew that it was going to have to be something that I figured out for myself. And I had to find my way into there myself, because even as a little kid, when opportunities or things, anything sort of flirting with professional childhoodness showed up, my parents were not going to let it happen. It was all about letting me be a kid, letting my sisters be kids. It was very clear to me that was off the table. And so, I was performing all throughout childhood, high school, but then it was, in college when I was like, I'm going to like go away to England and like study Shakespeare and like go find my own way through this and my own fire that lights me in this, because I'll have the support and I'll have the people there who get it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But if it's going to mean something to me, it has to come from me and not just, the expectations of a parent.
I want to interject for a minute, because I'm not sure if you guys know, but when we were auditioning actors for the role of Jacob, who of course plays the son in the film, we saw a lot of kids. It was a lot of digital videos, a lot of digital auditions, because of course it's a found footage film. So there's, it's all covered with computer and phone cameras anyway. We saw between 400 and 450 auditions for this kid, and we knew we had to find someone really special, because as you know, the whole film is kind of grounded in these two characters, right, the mom and the kid. And so we found Bailey early on. Bailey did not tell us who his dad was, to his credit. So he went through all of the auditions like everybody else, and all of the callbacks, and then of course the chemistry tests once we cast or got it down to 3 female leads that we were hoping would take the part. And it wasn't until after our producers called his agent and offered him the role that the producers called me back and said, "You're never going to believe it, but guess who Bailey Edwards is?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, he's done a couple things on IMDb, and all I know is he's a terrific actor." And they said, "It's Anthony Edwards' son." And I thought, I just thought that was such a testament to who Bailey is and what his skills are, that he did not rely even for a hot second on the name of his dad or any of those creds. It was pure talent,
Yeah, he did an awesome job in this film, like myself and Dave, we work in the psych field. And so we work with patients. It just felt so real. It was just really cool. So good job, Bailey.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's lightly terrifying. And it's, I will say that Jacob being my first impression to people, for many people in the world, is really been something. I just think of like times of meeting friends of Tucia's who saw early screenings, who sort of gave me the most ginger handshakes. I was like, oh God, please let this not continue. This is quite the first impression.
I didn't know what to expect when you're joining us today, because your character could have, like, the real you could have gone so many different ways based on who your character was. So I was like, this was really going to be intriguing, just to kind of see who the real Bailey is. Yeah, the character was just so multi-dimensional. So it's even more interesting meeting you in person than the character itself. It's just because I didn't know what to expect.
He transformed, Dave.
Yeah.
And it's funny he gets cast as villains and potentially psychopaths, because in person he's such a nice guy, and he's so sweet, and nothing like his actual character, which is it was really fun to work with him because of that.
Is it true that Bailey beat out Josh for this character? Josh, didn't you send in your video? Look at how did he not get it? Look at him.
That was on the download, Dave.
Josh's facial hair was too long, and his actual hair was a little too short.
The beard prevents me from a lot. Let me say that. My wife does not like it.
Brandon, did you want to share with Bailey how we are fanboys of his dad?
Oh yeah, Bailey, man, it's like for your dad. We enjoy his Pet Sematary too. Those films, it's
oh my
just
God,
one of our favorites.
Wow, that's actually, if you want a tiny, insane anecdote, the only reason that I'm here is because of that film, because that is where my mother met my dad.
Really?
Yeah. My mom's a makeup artist, and she met him on set of Pet Sematary too.
Awesome.
Oh man.
Huge fans of your parents.
It's so funny. Usually I always hear first ER or Goose from Top Gun.
No, not here.
No, I love that. That's amazing.
Guys are creepy. Like,
sorry.
Dad. Sorry, Bailey. I apologize for them.
It's all good.
Bailey, I had a real quick question on one of your other acting gigs. You were in the movie Bright, and I love that movie. Mm-hmm. And I went back and watched it again, and I still didn't find you in it. So how was it in the movie?
So I played an elf cop in that, and I was part of the cops chasing them sort of like through the whole thing, and that storyline got significantly slimmed over the course of the making of it. It was a really fun experience to do, and a little big and overwhelming. I was fresh out of college, and I was like, they had me learn Elvish for it. I had like contacts and prosthetics and all this like fun stuff. And then they handed me a real gun and I was like, whoa, we were really going full hog here. And it was, it was like full blown like macho action movie, which, has its ups and downs and ins and outs. And sometimes you don't end up appearing in the film itself. There's like, if we watch it together, I could point out where I'm wandering around and scenes that no longer exist.
Yeah, I was in a couple of films as an extra, and I got chopped out of every scene. So I can relate to that, but I have no ability to really act. So do I really belong in the movie? Probably not. So we're a little different there.
Well, to this day, I'll still have those lines of Elvish that were created for me, which I say to go to bed with.
Also in found footage films, for the most part, and I'm I'm a huge found footage fan. You do, for the most part, want to cast actors that people won't recognize. Now, with our distributors, we went back and forth because I've done television for the last 18, 19 years or something, but I'd never done a film before. And they said, well, since you're not known as a director, we have to get actors who are recognizable, name actors, name talent. And we did have some name talent lined up for the role of Jacob, who had auditioned who had also done a really terrific job. But Bailey just kept coming to the surface because regardless of how many auditions or callbacks there were, he performed it differently. He connected with it differently, and it never got old. It was always interesting. And so the big argument that I made at the time before I knew who his father was listen, he's a no name, but he's got the talent of the biggest recognizable actors that we know of his age, right? And to me, the fact that he didn't have a ton of IMDb credits and he had done a lot of theater, and I happen to love theater performers because I was a writer and director of theater before I got into even television. And I love working with actors on that level. And so for us, it was like, holy cow, he's not recognizable. And his dad is Anthony Edwards. Like it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah. I also love the fact that you just said you're a found footage fan, because I thought I was the only one here. So thank you for that. But you're totally right. I mean, that is what has made the Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, that's what made them so effective, is we didn't know who those characters were. I mean, I remember going to see the Blair Witch and people didn't know if those were real people. Like when we first discovered found footage films, it was like, was that real? Did I just see something real? So I think that's what makes it more effective.
Yeah, and that's how they marketed it in the festivals and everything. It was like missing persons. There was a court case over the Blair Witch Project because they said that those actors, they weren't actors, they're real people and they were still missing. It was genius marketing as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
And that wasn't the first, found footage film, but it was certainly what pioneered the found footage movement, right?
Yeah.
So here's a quick question. What's your top found footage film?
It's a really good question. Believe it or not, it's not Blair Witch. I liked Blair Witch. Blair Witch, it did that thing where the character was actually a cameraman, that he was there to document, but he kept shaking the camera constantly, and just no cameraman would ever shake the camera. So for me, that kept distracting me and making me think that he was trying to make it look real. Whereas if he was a real cameraman, it wouldn't be that shaky until he got the shit scared out of him. But before that, anyway, have you seen the Dirties? 0 Day? I like. There's a lot of. I watched some of the very first, as far as I know, found footage film, which was the Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought you were going to go with.
It's not my favorite either, but listen, they started a movement. They created a subgenre that's a very popular subgenre. It has waves of popularity. Right now, it's getting super popular again because of Host, right? But I would say probably listen, Creep. You can't get better than Creep. Creep is awesome.
Yeah.
That was a good pick. I like that movie.
Yeah, Creep is great.
If you're a found footage fan, I would recommend The Last Horror Movie. It's a little dated now. He goes into a VHS store and he's an actual killer and he's documenting it. It's very psychological if you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorites. It's called The Last Horror. Yeah. What scared me so bad, I lived by myself and I went to rent it from the when we had VHS stores. Blockbuster. I put it in, and then it was a guy who stalked the people that rented the tape, and I like shit myself that night. It was
my god! I jotted it down. I'll watch it. And what did you think of Cloverfield?
I liked it.
I was a big fan at the time. Yeah, I'm more of a fan of VHS. Is one of my favorite found footage.
And REC.
Yes. Oh yeah. I always forget about that one, but that's one of my favorites too. Yep.
There's a lot of good ones out there.
There really is. People sleep on these films. Like I always talk about Hell House LLC, I think was a really good one. House Octoberville or something along those lines. Those are, but everybody gives me a hard time about them. So,
well, Hell House, it was fantastic. I belong to a couple of found footage movie groups on Facebook, and the big joke is Hell House, and now Megan is missing because that had suddenly came back because it started trending on Instagram. But Hell House, it's a big joke every time someone pops on, like a new member of the group pops on and says, "Hey, has anyone seen Hell House LLC?" And it's like we all hit the laugh button.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how could you not be part of this group and have not seen Hell House?
Right. Yeah, it's a great film.
Or the sequels.
So now being a part of a found footage fan group, what are some of the members of the group think of your film?
Yeah, what's so great, Brandon, is that I joined this group before I ever made a found footage film.
Yep.
And so they've known me on there for a while. And so then once Mom came out, of course, people were posting it because there's a lot of posts every day. There's something like 30 or 40 new posts every day. They started posting, has anyone seen this movie yet? It looks really scary. And I was just watching it. And then people started connecting me with it. And they started saying, oh, the director is one of our members. And so then I got to field a lot of questions, actually, which was pretty cool because the questions from the found footage group are pretty, they're pretty interesting questions, because they know the genre so well. And they know that there's certain rules you may not want to break if you really want to, qualify as a found footage film, like, all the music, found footage films aren't scored, or they shouldn't be.
Right.
Everything should be sourced within the scene, right? And that's what we did in M.O.M, Mothers of Monsters. All of the music that you hear is Jacob's, he's playing that from the stereo, or it's playing from the car, or it's coming out of the television. It's all sourced. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't written and recorded in advance, which it was. A lot of the music, which was written and recorded by Salvatore, ended up with something that we connected with early on, and then he recorded it for us, and then we played it in the background, and we even rehearsed with it. Bailey and I rehearsed with it.
Cool. So I wanted to ask you about, the theme in Mom. So this idea of like a parent with a child who ends up committing, a heinous act like a school shooting or something. I think we've seen it in a few movies. We Need to Talk About Kevin is one that sticks out to me, which was a really good film. But we never really saw it from the aspect of the parent who's really convinced that the son was like destined for some kind of act. So what made you come up with this idea, and what was it like? What was important to you to try to get across when you were doing this?
First of all, We Need to Talk About Kevin is one of my favorite films in the world. And so obviously that resonated in me because I made a film that was similar, found footage and also horror. But the difference, of course, being that the mom and We Need to Talk About Kevin doubted herself a lot, right?
Yeah.
She was very much like, am I a good mom? And those exercises with him. And it wasn't till towards the end of the film where she realized he might do something. She doesn't want her daughter to go out and play, the bow and arrows with her son. Whereas in Mom, the film starts off with her saying, we've got a problem here. I think my son is a psychopath. And, he's already slipped through the cracks of the mental health care system. And he's gone through a diversion program, and he's outsmarted everybody, his therapists, everyone. And now I'm going to start spying on him to figure out if he is capable of hurting someone, if he's capable of hurting me, if he's capable of murder, right? The idea started, I have to say, it was a puncturing of my consciousness before it was ever an idea for a film, which was that in 2012, with the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Connecticut, my sister, all my family lives back east, and my sister, her daughter, was supposed to be in Sandy Hook. They had enrolled, and when I saw that on the news, I thought she was in that class, and of course, that's where a former student brought a gun into school and mowed down 26 people, right? 20 of them being first graders, which is the grade that my niece would have been in. And I couldn't get hold of my sister, and I didn't know if my niece was in that classroom or not. And I have to say that was the most paralyzing, terrifying 24 hours of not knowing if my niece had been killed in that school shooting. And so she wasn't there, thank God. But what I started to do is a lot of research because I could not comprehend how someone could have so much disdain for life, for humans, for themselves, to go and create this kind of chaos and killing people, massacring people. So I started to do a lot of research, and the more I researched, the more complicated it became, because the issues of school shootings, there's all, people think there's all kinds of theories across the board, right? It's too much video games. It's access or lack thereof to mental health. It's, access to military grade weapons. It's single home parenting. What I came to the conclusion after reading a lot of, and still reading memoirs. In fact, listen, a lot of the film was borrowed from the manifestos and memoirs of real school shooters and their parents. There's even dialogue in there that's from the memoirs of the Columbine shooters. What I learned is that, yes, all those things are relevant, but what it comes down to, in my opinion, is one main thing, which is a fundamental breakdown of communication between a parent and a child, which is also a systemic societal issue, right? Which is we don't talk to each other anymore. People don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to talk to their kids. And of course, in the age of technology, boy, now we're really removed. And to me, the first thing that I thought for many years was racism, which is in the film, which I think is one of the number one things that causes these shootings. In fact, across the board, what's interesting is there's not a huge profile for what these kids are. There's the profile that we think, oh, they're goth, they have long hair, they don't have friends, they're antisocial, they don't do well in school. It's not necessarily true. I read Sue Claybold's memoir, A Mother's Reckoning, and she's the mom of one of the Columbine shooters. Her son did not fit the profile of kids that went and shot up their school. And I thought that was interesting. And I also wanted to make sure that message was in there too, that there isn't necessarily a profile, because parents who have troubled teens, especially teen boys, think that they're alone, and there's a stigma there, right? Where people don't want to talk about it. Well, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of parents who are going through the same thing. And we don't know yet what causes someone to be a psychopath or, a troubled teen to then going and shooting up a school, right? All of those theories are in there, right? Because it's become a very politicized, kind of polarizing issue, which is, it's about mental health care and gun control. So now it's right or left, right? I think it's way more complicated than that. And that's not, talking about it in those terms isn't going to solve anything. Yeah. So for me, what I wanted to do with this film is explore all those theories, racism, single home parenting, all of that, over medication. But yet what the film is grounded in is this lack of communication between one mother and one son. And to me, that is the heart of where the problem stems from. It's about communication. And of course, in this film, you see the consequences that happen with a lack of communication. So that's the main things I wanted to get across. Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of tail onto that. I'm sure you've probably have you seen Gus Van Sant's Elephant?
Yes.
So in that film, he kind of gives like more of a one-sided version of it. It would seem like, and kind of like listening to your description, it seems like his portrayal was more of like the stereotypical teenagers, kind of the outcasts, didn't really, show too much about their parental involvement. Now, do you think that's an accurate portrayal? Do you think it's callous to portray it that way? Because, how many teenagers are outcasts in that way and never going to do an act like that? Like, do you think that's something a director should have awareness of?
You will very rarely find me criticizing another artist, another director.
Sure.
I don't think it was callous. I think that it was probably the easier go-to, because statistically, there are certain traits that happen to be in common, but people don't ever, peel back the layers of the onion and actually look at what's really happening. And, Elephant gives birth to films like M.O.M, in my opinion,
sure.
Right? Because every time you see a film that talks about this, then you are talking about it. And then therefore, there's a chance, a sliver of hope for change, right? It's become so politicized that people aren't talking about it enough, and therefore there's no meaningful change being enacted on any level. So I actually give props to that film for keeping that topic, in conversation. We're talking about it right now, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to approach. Well, there is a right way or a wrong way to approach the subject matter, but I don't think there was anything wrong with what Elephant was about. I think that
sure.
It was a launching point, a springboard for additional conversations and maybe a deeper reflection.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to misrepresent this film to your listeners, because listen, at the end of the day, it's a horror film. It is a psychological thriller, very dark and disturbing psychological thriller, and there's no political messaging. Actually, you know what I mean? It's much more about their very dysfunctional relationship. There happens to be personal for me, the writer and director myself.
I guess that I wanted to just kind of tail this and extend this to both of you. With that being said, it is a horror film, and you're going for certain aspects when you're doing that, when you're shooting a horror film. Now, what was like, how was it for you trying to not be insensitive to the topic as well, like to try to avoid taking it too far? Did you guys feel any pressure of that, like filming a film that could be considered pretty divisive if you did one move that somebody was offended by? And I'll extend that to both of you, because Bailey, you're essentially portraying the individual that, everybody's kind of like looking at as that stereotype of the psychopath.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was such, I feel so lucky to have been a part of this. I'll just start there. I think that working from day one, working with Tucia was such a treat for me. And it's been like this adventure that we've really gone on, and from the shooting all the way through the edit, through where it is today. And as a result, I just felt so lucky that there was someone, a writer director, who had really done the work, had done the research, had built out the colors of this world. Because then as an actor, you walk into a fully formed world. And I think the prime sort of example of that being that, like, given the nature of it being a found footage film, there'd be certain scenes. There's this scene where Abby's trying to have a conversation with Jacob, and we moved from room to room to room to room in that house. And it's such a perfect metaphor for how I feel about the whole process of this, because that was a whole world. That was a house that we were in. And Tucia had, down to the colors of the walls, to the things that I was carrying in my pockets, to what, my backpack, every element of that world was so perfectly made that she called action, and I stepped into that house, and I was in that house with my mom, and all the background, all the information I needed to know about what was going on here had been created. And it became, sort of to your point, a very theatrical, and I think speaks to both of our sort of theatrical worlds, wherein action was called and we entered this space, and we did that whole scene, moving room to room to room, living in that space together. And I think that ultimately, when it comes down to it, that we talk about all these influences, we talk about the memoirs, we talk about the world that was built around this, but it is a relationship between a mother and a son.
Yeah.
And that's human and true. And regardless of the traumas and the shit that Jacob is going through, there's a fundamental humanity and a breakdown that's happened there. And as an actor, that's right where you lock in. All the other colors and whistles and fun stuff I got to say, and things that, the music and the background reading that Tucia was sending me were all amazing colors to add to that. But at the end of the day, Tucia created a world where we could also explore something utterly, utterly human. And as the film sort of shows, really, really broken.
Yeah.
And thank you, Bailey. I miss you. I will say that, what I struggled with most with how to tell this story and how to contribute to that national dialogue about school shooters and what may or may not be causing them was how not to sensationalize the topic, right? Because at the end of the day, what you cannot do as anybody, any responsible filmmaker, but any responsible human, is you can't sensationalize it, you can't glorify it, you can't inspire copycats, right? So you'll see in the film, and even when I speak about it, or the articles that have been written, we never say the names of the shooters. In fact, that's part of the dialogue, part of the audio that comes out of the television, is don't glorify these shooters by saying their name. It's easy to miss. There's a lot that's easy to miss. I think that's why they're calling it a cult classic, because although it's not called classic yet because it's only 2020, but there's a lot of layers to the film. And if you're listening to the audio track, there's a lot of clues in there. But I do think that sensationalizing the topic or having people, the critical reception be someone misinterpreting where we were coming from in this film kept me up at night quite a bit. We did partner early on, before we even finished casting, in the script phases. We did partner with several mental health organizations, nonprofits, IVAT and NPEIV, so that they would vet the script. They were actually on set. Some of their voices are the voices that you're hearing out of the television. They're the hosts that are speaking about mental illness. And they were with us kind of every step of the way to help me make sure that I wasn't sensationalizing it and make sure that it was grounded in reality, even down to the casting, like the casting of Ed Asner, of course, who plays Dr. Arden. We had a couple people in mind, and the head of one of the co-founders of IVAT, by the way, said to me, because this therapist doesn't do a great job, right? He's trying to interpret her dreams and he's pointing the finger at her and he's not necessarily actively listening to her. It would be great if you could cast an older actor to play that role, because what's happening in therapy and psychiatry and mental health right now is there's a lot of what she called dinosaurs who are giving advice, but they're not necessarily listening. They're not necessarily basing it on what they're hearing or experiencing. They're basing it on old philosophy. So it'd be great if you cast an older man character in that role. And I was like, once we found Ed Asner, I said, is like between 80 and 90 old enough? So they provided a lot of support and information and resources along the way so that we didn't cross that line.
That's great.
That's really awesome. So you were talking about acting, and this question is for Bailey. There was a lot of scenes where you were by yourself, where you didn't have anybody to work off of, really, and the dynamic between you and your mother was awesome in the film, and you can see how you guys worked off each other really well. You can see that chemistry. But then when you were by yourself, it was completely different. How was that acting like by yourself without being able to work like off anybody?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I think that first testament goes to Melinda, who played my mother, Melinda Page Hamilton, who's wonderfully, wonderfully talented and was another, much like Tucia. There's so many elements of this that feel like weirdly faded to me. Like, was a person who, like, from my first work session audition with her was like, oh my God, this, like, there's, like beyond the fact that like we both grew up in New York, there are all these weird little things in common. This was an actor whose work and the way she worked completely like was in sync with mine. And so then to have that person and you're, working on this for weeks together and we're in this house together, it's very easy to have the ghost of that brought back to life for you when you have this new sort of acting mom to play with. But I think, at the end of the day, there were also still a lot of me and a camera in a closet moment that I think weirdly became an interesting acting exercise in itself. Tucia has sort of touched on this, but when in this day and age, in this moment of like mediated technological distance, that became very real and realized in the actual performance of it. You're working with a camera, not even a real person. You're talking to a screen, not another human being. And so when you're feeding into these feelings of not being understood, being completely separate, not being able to connect with a family member, another person, that's all the fuel you need. You're talking to a camera. You're not even talking to the woman. And I think that Tucia pointed this out a long forever ago, where there's the moments where we are actually together are very rare in the film. And it's that great big blind spot for Abby, the mom, that she never is really talking to her son. And so as an actor, it was a challenge, but weirdly the perfect thing to cultivate that kind of disassociation.
Now, Bailey, what was the preparation like for becoming Jacob?
I got the role in the beginning of December, and luckily we had a little bit of time. We were going to start shooting in January. So I started like hit the ground running. As another happenstance would be, lived 6 minutes away from Tucia, and I started being able to just go over to her house and start working on it and start talking about it and having her be able to send me music, memoirs, things for me to read to start percolating on what this boy could be. And I think that there's like it's tricky, but there's it's a very easy thing when it comes to like, okay, you're going to play this psychopathic character. There's like this psychopathy around, like he's a sociopath. We don't know, but it's very easy to get then caught up in the magic sort of showiness of that, of the laughing and then going very serious and dead behind the eyes, and this sort of outside inning of this boy. Mm-hmm. And I keep referring to him boy because that's the part that was my step into them, is the youth and the like teenageness of this character. And the fact is, and no spoilers, that this is also a character who is performing a lot. Yeah. So weirdly, even though this was a boy who is going to be, I read the script and knew where the terrifying world this was going into, it had to start from a place of like a scared, defensive, angry boy. And those are all feelings that we can all get on board with. And these questions of whether or not he's a psychopath, these questions of whether or not you have to be a psychopath to do psychopathic things, those are the questions that the movie's brings up and are at play in this. But in terms of getting involved with this character, I had all the amazing research and world and videos and interviews that Tucia could filter my way, while also just remembering that this is a angry, alone, deeply, deeply sad teenage boy who is feeling trapped. And that humanity, that feeling was like the way into understanding someone who also on some level might not be feeling anything.
Yeah. Every year we have to watch videos for trainings, real life issues where we discuss as a group all the cues and triggers that we could identify in a short film, where we had to just kind of like pick it apart at the end. And so I think that you guys did really well on that.
Thank you, Brandon. I take that as a huge compliment, by the way.
Yeah.
Because it's such a fine line. It's such a gray area. And you do want to, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you might get a kick out of this, Brandon, if you work in mental health at all, everything we did was catered to secretly. Most people don't know this, will never know this, and may not even care, but was catered to mental health, meaning the color scheme, the color palette of the film is lime green, which, as you know, is the color of mental health awareness. Their last name is Bell, right, which is a symbol of hope in mental health. There's bells planted throughout the film. Everything that we did, even though I knew, and I remember the producer saying to me, "Why do you care so much? Like, why does it have to follow this thing that you're doing?" And I'm like, for my own integrity. Because on every level, we have to maintain our integrity about mental health. Not that mental health is solely the problem, which it's not, but certainly it plays a very, very big role. And I wanted to make sure that I was true to that on every level throughout the entire process, from set design, for writing, set design, and of course, directing and even in post. So that's a huge compliment from you, and I appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, and a tiny interjection here. I mean, like, this is literally the reason why you have people who love horror, who love found footage, make movies, because they imbue movies with this level of care and this level of detail. And that, as an actor, I was thrilled to go on somebody else's adventure, because Tucia had built out this incredible adventure, and she freaking loves found footage. She loves horror films, and so she was going to make this such a rich and layered, down to the semantic, the colors, every layer of it was going to be taken care of, because this is a world that she's passionate about, knows, and was ready to like absolutely explode on.
Yeah. And I just want to also kind of like tail on that. I think another reason why this movie is being well received outside of like the film itself is also you both are doing a great job with connecting with fans, which this horror community eats that up. Like, that goes so far with us, as far as like, you know, just feeling like not only do we have this movie to connect to, but we also now feel this connection with the creators, the actors. So, you know, just as horror fans, you know, we really appreciate that as well. So, you know, that's why it means something when you guys come onto an interview. And, you know, when I say I'm surprised we were able to put this together, I really am. It's like, you know, not every cast and crew is willing to do that of every film. So it means a lot to us.
Yeah. And you know what, Dave, it's so interesting because we do get quite a bit of requests for podcasts or even written interviews, or, I mean, no longer do we do in-person interviews. The film opened on Friday, the 13th of March. And the city closed down that night and theaters closed that Sunday. So we had 3 days in theaters, which was a real gut punch. But nonetheless, when we do get those requests for podcasts, my very first question to our PR team is, are they part of the hashtag horror fam or not? And when they're part of the horror fam, it means a lot to me, because I know that they're watching from a different place. And you can see on all of our feeds on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, some people who aren't horror fans are like, I didn't get it. It was slow, all these things. And I look them up, you know, for the most part, I'll look them up and I'll see that they're not horror. They don't understand horror. They don't have those same kinds of sensibilities or experience in that genre. And then when I see their comments, I'm like, eh. But when I see a comment from a horror fan, I'm like, I wish that the third act had been such and such, and I see that they're, in their profile it says #horror or horror fam. I'll take them more seriously. Like I'll look at them and I'll be like, oh, really? Could it have been? I'm not sure, but I will consider it, which is interesting. Yeah. And so we love our horror fans as much as our horror fans love us.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
I take full credit. I saw it first.
No, and I said, did not.
You got to see this.
Get out of here.
And then it was pretty awesome because we all really liked it. So then that led to this,
which is a first, actually, right? Isn't that a first?
Yeah,
all three of us came to a consensus.
Too much. So
let me ask you: Did any of you watch it more than once before you really liked it?
I liked it the first go around.
Yeah, same.
You guys are so evolved.
Well, it was really interesting for me, which kind of ties into this next question too. Like, so in the beginning of the film, you think Jacob really is a psychopath, given some of the stuff that
spoiler alerts. Not spoiler alerts.
Spoiler alert. So the scene where he throws the brick off the bridge and stuff, and I'm like, wow, this kid really is messed up, And it evolves where it's like now the mother. The more you watch, the more you realize the mother is really off. And it just evolves from the son, and you're like, oh, the son's a psychopath. Mm-hmm. But then you're like, wait a minute, the mom's a psychopath. And the way it just built was really interesting, but it was awesome the way it got built. And the first time I watched it, I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And the question there was it hard to get it so perfectly lined up like that?
Yes. It was like I lost a lot of weight, and I think my hair is going gray. It was, and I have to tell you, Joshua, like there was a lot in the film that actually wasn't in the original script. Meaning, we actually did stay pretty true to the script of what we filmed with Abby and with Jacob, but all of that documentary footage. So we did a lot of screenings early on with our horror, well, with all of our film friends and television films, but also with a lot of our horror friends and community. And a lot of people had said, well, what is Jacob like when he's not at home? And we thought, well, how on earth would we be able to capture that and still stay true to the found footage format, which is there's got to be a reason for filming. There's got to be a reason for someone to be looking at the film. And I talked about it with Bailey, and Bailey put me in touch with a director friend of his named Mark Polish, who is an extraordinary director. And he had said to me, listen, we need to be aware that there is a monster in the house, whether or not you know who that monster is. There is a monster in the house. We need to be aware of it right away, and it needs to be there the whole time. And so we thought, well, how would we start to show what Jacob is like outside of the home? And a lot of people miss this, and it's easily missable, I should say. But when Abby, when she's checking on her desktop, you'll see a file on there that's called Jacob's iCloud. So she has hacked in and has access to his iCloud. So that when we figured that out, like it could actually make sense. We could actually do it because, I don't want to say I've done it before, but I may or may not have. There's kids there, when you have kids or you have sisters with kids,
I have kids. You don't need to explain.
Right. You tend to spy and feel okay about it. So we realized if she had access, there was multiple scenes that were cut out of the film too. One of them was her actually getting access through a software program. Once she has access to his iCloud, she has access to the videos on his phone. We thought, well, what kind of videos would be on his phone? So then we went out and filmed after the film was already wrapped. During the rough cut 2 phase, we went out and filmed Jacob Bailey doing things with his friends. And one of the producers has said to me, you're going to think I'm a jerk for saying this, but my brother in high school, he dropped a brick off of a freeway overpass. And it's so not like him because he's such an evolved kind of intellectual guy, but he was a jerk. He was a teen and this happens. Yeah. And I thought, no, that's perfect. In fact, let's ask all of our crew members, all of our cast members, what's the jerkiest thing you or one of your siblings have ever done? And then let's make Jacob do it, right? And have it be his friends videotaping him. And now she has access to his iCloud, so we can actually play that and still stay true to the format. So that's what we did. And then we, of course, and that was never scripted in the original script. That came afterwards. And the other thing that came afterwards was documentary footage of Jacob, who's Bailey, as a kid. We thought, when did mom become obsessed with filming him, right? And it couldn't have started just when he was 16, right? What happened when he was 14 and went to the diversion program and was maybe, had maps and bump stocks and things of perhaps, suggesting he was going to shoot up his school at 14. And then we thought, I had said, no, because I know this character in and out. I've dreamed about her and lived her for years. I said, no, she's been filming him since he was a kid. Well, where are those videos? Well, how the heck are we going to cast an actor who looks like Bailey or Jacob as a kid? And we called up Bailey. I called up Bailey and I said, do you have any footage of yourself, like home video from when you were a kid? And were you ever creepy? And him and his dad, and was it your mom too, Bailey? Maybe you could speak to this, that we got quite a few tapes, the little tapes, right? That you and I sat in my living room right here, went through and played what mom, Abby, could be really saying during these videos that were actually harmless. But of course, in the film, once you dub in Melinda's voice, you realize, oh my God, she's been obsessed with filming him since he was a kid, and who, nature or nurture, what prompted him to behave this way. Yeah, Bailey, all those videos.
Oh, that's
how have your parents reacted to those videos? Were they like, oh my God, my voice is in the video and the film and everyone's seeing it and they think I'm a psycho?
Yeah. I mean, my parents sort of got over their film fears a long time ago, but I will say that this is the weird blessing of being the firstborn child, is that I am the most well-documented little kid. Like, this is that we pulled so many clips for the film, and there's so much more. I have hours and hours of footage of me as a little kid, because my parents, when you have your first little kid in the world, everything they do is magical, even if it's, shitting themselves and rolling down a hill. Like, that's all of it's amazing. And so they, it was lucky happens, very filmy parents, but but what I love too, also in the space of horror fans and people who have reached out to me about the film and stuff, which, in this pandemic we're living in, is great, feels great when you're like, I don't know when I'll ever act again. But the not knowing, is that actually you as a child? Is that not? Because obviously it looks exactly like me. It is me. Yeah. But that's one of my favorite parts of this, was this, to see it taking all these component pieces. And, I've worked with other filmmakers or other situations where people can get really caught up in the preciousness of what they shot and what they intended to shoot and what they had written and their vision and their moving forward with it. But this responsive way in which Tucia was even able to step back from her own work and respond to it and be like, what is working? What's not working? What do we need more of? What do we want to see? What are we missing here? That is such a perfect part of that to me, which was let's look at something like real footage of you as a kid and see how we can spin it, how we can twist. Because I was a lovely child. Okay. I was a very sweet little kid.
You gotta admit, you're a pretty adorable kid. You're definitely a pretty adorable kid.
Yeah, okay. I will. I had long blonde hair was the whole thing. But to see with that vision, with knowing what she needed to see out of Jacob and what we needed to see out of Jacob, to chart that experience across the film of, oh, it's him, oh, it's her, oh, it's him, oh, it's her. The craziness of that. She was ready to use everything and find the right tools in order to make that happen.
Yeah. Wanted to say that the scene that you guys referenced already with the throwing the brick, for me, that was it was a short scene. It was strong to me though, because it's as much as I know in the moment, I know it was trying to portray evil. He was doing evil deeds already. But at the same time, I had that thought oh man, I've done some stupid, dangerous stuff in my past that I would look back now and probably never admit to anybody that I did. And that could easily be chalked up to one of those. So it was interesting. We were supposed to see it one way, but then you can also have that thought well, any teenager might do something without thinking of the ramifications of it. I just wanted to share quickly too, something that resonated with me during the film. So I've been doing therapy with kids, and I also have to work with their parents. And this idea that their parents are so concerned that they might have something, their kid might have something that they had, such as depression or, any mental health diagnosis. And they come in and they're very concerned. They want this they want this explanation. Like, do you feel the same? Do you see this in my child? And like, that's kind of what the mom in this movie, like I connected with her on that. Like, she had this concern. She just didn't know exactly how to express it. And she had her own therapist, but he wasn't really listening, as we've already talked about. So she was just like making these videos to kind of prove her case. But it was really like, she was just concerned because she knew what she struggled with. And I just thought that was such a strong message. It really connected with that, with me. So I appreciated that.
Yeah. And listen, there is genetics are obviously involved. It's both nature and nurture, but I do think that we can change the course of things through treatment, right? There's social emotional learning programs now that I think should be, implemented not just in schools, but in communities, right? It teaches the community, not just parents, not just kids, but everyone. But there's also, there's untreated trauma. If you don't have medication, and sure, there's an argument to be made that there's over medication, but if you don't have therapists, if you don't have all of those resources or access to them, untreated trauma does manifest, right, as more untreated trauma. So those themes are in there as well, because clearly, as you realize, which, it's hinted into with the trailer, people watch the trailer and they're like, I think I understand what the film's about. I think mom might be crazy too. And I'm like, good. I'm glad you got that. We worked real hard to get that into the trailer, right? Because obviously we want that kind of mental roller coaster ride of what it might really be like to think it's him and then be wondering, well, could it be me? Well, my mom is saying it's me, and my therapist is saying, hey, do you remember the pictures you drew when you were a kid? And I'm like,
yep.
No. And then, of course, you realize that Abby's keeping a big secret in the film that isn't revealed until much later in the film, where you realize all of these things contribute to where she's at, which may also be contributing to where he's at, And
that's what I was saying too, with Jacob and Abby, their relationship was built off of negative attention. She was always trying to catch him in the act of doing something wrong instead of focusing on the positive interactions with Jacob. There was a deleted scene that you guys had. Why was the Mother's Day scene deleted? It kind of shows Abby praising Jacob for never forgetting Mother's Day. And then she holds up the flowers and says, well, it's nice to think that he loves me.
Oh my God, we've got an astute viewer right here. That was a deleted scene, and I think he knows that, because I think we may have promoted that for Mother's Day, maybe. There were a lot of scenes. So when we made the film, of course, I had it all in my head, how it was all going to play. And then I started playing with, the talent of Bailey and Melinda and what they brought to it. And of course that expanded some things, and, stuff that transpired in the closet became a little longer and deeper and scarier than I had maybe originally imagined. So then we had to make room for that, right? When you make a film, if something magical happens and you can recognize that that's happening, you want to include that in the film. But of course you don't want to go over a 95-minute clock or whatever it is. So we had to then make room for it. So we had to start taking things away. And of course, in the edit, it becomes a house of cards, especially when we decided after the first 4 or 5 screenings, crap, we have to now add Jacob with his friends, and now Jacob when he's a toddler. So you have to make room for all of that. So we had to figure out strategically what had to come out, and that was one of the scenes that came out, which was the Mother's Day scene, and several other scenes, which I'm sure they're going to promote soon because they're edited. But yeah, that scene came out because it wasn't as important as some of the other scenes where, you saw Jacob put a blanket over his mom, and he also made breakfast for his mom in that scene, which is also deleted. But you see him be affectionate to her, which triggers in your head, okay, but everyone thinks that psychopaths are incapable of emotion, right? And I don't want to give away if he was a psychopath or not, but we did want to plant and kind of seed this kid is capable of emotion and affection and care and nurturing towards his mom, and that became more important. So we had to lose some, kill some babies along the way.
When she also labeled him as fake Jacob, when she talked about all the positive things, like hanging with his friends and grades in school and stuff like that. So, you would see like how she would try to split him and try to make him bad when he was also doing positive things.
Yeah, exactly. And that came directly from Sue Claybold's memoir. And she was the mom of one of the Columbine shooters, where he didn't fit the profile. And at one point she asked, like, is he being fake to me or to his friends? Like, who's the real, and I don't want to use his name, but who's my real son? And so I wanted to incorporate that into the film because, of course, all these moms who have troubled teens feel like they're alone. And I have so many friends, and even college friends who are like, oh my God, I think my kid might be capable of such and such. She's such a freak. Listen, you guys, we put a 800 number at the end of the film, which we debated quite a bit about putting it there because I didn't want it to be a social messaging film, not overtly. And we ended up putting that number there. That number in the first 3 months, the film being released earlier this year, was inundated with calls to the point where they had to call us and say, you have to give another number because we don't have enough people to answer these emergency calls. And I said, well, what are the calls? Moms who feel like their sons are dangerous and realize, oh, there's resources for this. I'm not alone. I mean, to me, as sad as that is, it was also like, that's why one of the main reasons why I made the film was so people didn't know, moms, parents, but a lot of single moms didn't know, didn't think that they were alone and realized a lot of people are having this problem and there's resources out there that can provide help,
That's really cool. So this is a big spoiler for anybody listening. If you haven't watched this film, turn it off, watch it, and then come back and listen to this. There was one question I did have, and as a father, I have a teenage daughter, and my son is now 10. Brandon's also a dad. He's got a teenager. So I watched this film, and when the mom inadvertently, so to speak, kills her son, I was like, what the fuck? Like, it just blew me away. And I couldn't imagine, I couldn't imagine losing a kid.
Killing your kid.
Yeah, I was like, damn. Did you catch any slack for that from anybody? Or was there anybody who was like, oh, that wasn't right or anything like that? I was just curious.
Yes, thank God. Most people are like, holy cow, how is that a solution? Which is exactly what I want them to ask, because I have to say there was 5 endings to to this film. The ending was not my idea, meaning I was part of a Facebook group who were the Sandy Hook family survivors, people who had their kids were either killed or survived the Sandy Hook shooting in Connecticut in 2012. And the parents were so angry, understandably so. And there was one dad whose kid had survived, was in the classroom and survived, who said, I don't want to give their names, but the kid who shot up Sandy Hook was deeply, deeply troubled, right? He was on a lot of meds. He could not socialize. He had a lot of problems. His mom knew it. His dad knew it. His dad moved out. Mom was raising him. How they connected was at the shooting range, right? She got him loads of guns and they went to the shooting range and they shot. And they felt connected. Nothing wrong with shooting ranges, by the way, or guns. In fact, the producers are all NRA members, and I have no problem with that. Military grade, access to military grade weapons are a little bit more problematic. There was one dad on this Facebook group who said, if I was this kid's father or mother, and I knew how troubled he was, and I had any idea that he would go and hurt those kids, I would have shot him myself. And it was an uproar, mostly from me, on that Facebook thread where I said, how is that a solution? You're going to kill your kid? Like, how is that even possibly a solution? How does that help anything? How does that evolve us as a species, right? And a lot of people fought against me, saying, you didn't have a kid there. Your niece wasn't actually there. So you don't know how it feels to have a child killed or almost killed there, really. And they were right. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, what would that look like? If a mom killed her son to intervene on potentially him shooting up his school, what would that look like? And obviously it's a very, very poor solution, right? And it comes from untreated trauma on her part as well, and grandma's part and the system. And so when people are outraged about that ending, I say, rah, 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 they're getting it. That's right. That is certainly not a solution, right? Yeah. But this is what people who are affected by that are suggesting, some people, as a solution. And so that's kind of was the impetus of the film, which was, hey guys, what would that solution really look like, right? How horrifying would that be? Of course, now she's been in the closet, spoiler alert, but she's been in the closet for, almost 3 days now. She hasn't been, no nourishment. She hasn't slept. She hasn't had any food, any water. So obviously things are getting to her, and she's unstable from the beginning. So a lot of things contributed to that final act of violence. But at the end of the day, some people are outraged, but most people get where we were coming from and what we were trying to say. Yeah.
And then I kind of wanted to get Bailey's take on it too.
Oh yeah. It's horrific. It's really horrific. And I remember in the edit of it and talking to Tucia and different people's reactions to it, there was litigation around like what we should see, how intense it should be, how gory, not gory, what we should and shouldn't hear. And, you know, it was that thing where you just know that like, we have to understand the perversity of this. We have to understand how horrific this is, beyond the realm of pulpy horror, beyond the realm of titillating thriller. What has gone so horribly wrong here that this is where we've gotten to? And it's really interesting because to me, even the first time I read the script, it's almost like Greek classically in its actual nature. It's Agamemnon, it's terror of a prophecy leading you to kill your child, being told like the fear of the future, the fear of what will come, or the knowledge of what must happen or what is to come, leading a parent to kill a child, for interfamilial violence to happen. And it's so, and I bring up Greek classical because it's across our history, it's across our culture, it's across our Western world that this is like this kind of interfamily violence, this kind of danger, the flip sides of love and hate, and the possibility for really, really horrific things to happen inside of the safety and the nest of the home is something we do have to reckon with. And as these things continue to happen, not losing sight of the horror of that, not losing sight of, for one of the rare moments in this film when the two bodies are actually going to come together, that the violent act of that is something that we should be shocked by, reflect on, and think about the way in which it happens in our world.
Yeah, you guys, that scene was originally a lot bloodier. I mean, we had all kinds of special effects, makeup artists and assistants of assistants to make that blood spurt on the walls, gory. And then when we were in edit, it just didn't seem necessary. It just didn't. And as a horror guru, I was like, but no, we have to do it. That's why I made the film. But it didn't seem to kind of maintain the integrity of, you know, the backbone of the film. So we ended up cutting it down, and you can see some things spray on the wall. You can see some of that, but we took it out because it actually played into sensationalizing it. And I had to be true to that. So as much as it, like, no pun intended, but tore my heart out to lose all my blood, I think the act of, and him laughing during, which obviously was, you know, is a callback to her recurring nightmare, right? Was enough, I thought. It was powerful enough to not have to see as much gore as I had initially intended and paid for.
Also very Greek classical to have the violence occurring just off screen.
Yeah.
She's very smart, this one. That's Tucia. She gets it all.
Yeah.
So now we found out that you're a big fan of found footage. Also, we talked about Cannibal Holocaust. And now it was another question Josh wanted to bring up about rats.
Yeah, Brandon's going to elaborate on this. Were there any animals harmed in the filming of this film?
No, and I have to tell you, we're all animal rights activists. My wife is an animal rights activist. And so not only were animals not harmed, but we rescued them during the process, meaning we needed a bearded dragon lizard, right, named Adolf for Jacob to have. Adolf, you know, Junior and Junior. And so we went to the pet stores, and these lizards looked really happy and content. And we were like, crap. Maybe one of the producers had the idea of maybe we should go to Craigslist and see if we can rescue a lizard. And boy, I thought that was a terrific idea. So we did. We got this dilapidated, little shriveled, sad, what we thought was an ancient old lizard. And we, you know, got him a tank and helped him and gave him baths. I've never given a bearded dragon a bath, but boy, is that rewarding. And now this lizard is like this big. And the producers, not only did we film with him, but then we got him all kinds of lights and every single insect that's in those scenes, the crickets, he ate them all. And now he lives, the producers, one of the producers both producers, it's a husband and wife duo, adopted the bearded dragon. And now he lives in a giant cage, a giant aquarium, and they send me pictures every once in a while. I've got to post some on our social media. I got to give it to Wendy, but where this lizard is gigantic now and very, very happy. And as far as the rats, we had to get taxidermy rats because there's some violent scenes with Jacob when he blows a tantrum with the rats, and obviously he's named them Volt 100 and Volt 200. He's named them based on the experiments he's doing with how much electricity they can withstand. And so we filmed with the rats first, and then we had to film the scenes where he hurts the rats. So the biggest challenge, which I'm going to blame on our producers entirely, is, well, how do we find a rat that has a white stomach like the one that the live ones that we actually filmed with? So they had to go to different taxidermy companies and finally get some taxidermy rats that had white stomachs. And we used those rats for the scenes. There is Joshua, you would enjoy, I'll send it to you. If you guys send me your emails, there's a blooper that we published on one of our social media accounts.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the blooper, Bailey, because you were the victim of it?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It's at the very end of this very long scene that we'd done, moving from room to room in the house. And we had to do in order to keep the scene going, we had to do a little switch out. So I get rid of the real rat and then go back and go get a taxi and then pick up a taxidermy rat, because at the end of the scene, I'm going to throw the rat back into the cage. And obviously I'm not going to throw adorable live rat into a glass aquarium across the room. So I go to get the taxidermy rat. I'm sitting there. I'm trying to even remember what the line was, but it's the peak of the scene of the intensity of like me mocking my Abby, my mom, and her.
He says to you, "What is wrong with you?"
Oh yeah, what is wrong with you? And then I tell her to like shut off her alarm because it's really fucking annoying, or whatever bitchy little thing Jacob says. And we're right there, we're right in it. We're really just acting big time. And I'm sitting there with this fake taxidermy rat in my lap, knowing full well there's a camera right here, and out of the corner of both Melinda and my eyes at the same, we're locked eyes, but we can see crawling into frame is the live rat, having fully escaped wherever he was being held. And we're just trying to stay there. We're like trying everything we can to stay there, and he just keeps coming, and then we just lost it. Like, would not handle the fact that we had been, our chicanery had been foiled by a live rat.
Because obviously in acting or any film set or theater, you never want to cut yourself, right, until the director calls cut. And lots of times there's magic that happens when the actors don't think they're doing a good job. But I think the fact that they're fucking up and stuttering or whatever it is, I think it's magic, right? So we always try not to cut ourselves. And so what we could see, we had two cameras on the scene. We could see that he's holding this fake, dead taxidermy rat, and the real rat is running through. But I wasn't calling cut because I think we were all in Video Village with our four big monitors up, and I was looking and I could see the rat, and I kept thinking, oh, I can still use the other angle. Because I'm editing in my head. And then all of a sudden, these two, Bailey and Melinda, just were like like you said, the height of the scene, they're like, bah! And the poor stunt coordinator was like, I'm sorry. He got out of my hand. So no, I mean, there were no animals harmed. In fact, we even made quite an effort to let crickets that, I'm trying to remember the name of the lizard now. What's the name? Remember, Bailey? It's been a little while
His
now.
real name is
Nugget.
It's Nugget.
Because he was a small nugget, now he's a big nugget. That Nugget didn't. The crickets that Nugget didn't eat, we made sure that we let them go. So no, nothing, not even insects were harmed in this film.
Nice.
That's good.
Yeah, we have a hedgehog, and I let my crickets go that the hedgehog didn't eat. So now I have crickets in my basement.
So when things were a little normal, we would always do like movie nights and everything, and then we would help raise money for animal rescues and everything like that. So we're really animal driven. So we're glad nothing happened to none of the pets.
No, and it hurt me to even write those scenes. But yeah, I mean, every towel in our house that's ever been around for more than a few years is at the local pet veterinary. Yeah.
Nice.
Speaking of pet, completely off topic before we go any further, guys, I forgot to tell you, we adopted 2 kittens, one for each of the kids, and we haven't gotten them yet because they're still, I think their mom passed, so they were being fed with bottles and stuff, but we're going to pick them up this week. So that is the big news in the Dahlin household.
Congrats, Josh.
I picked this moment in this interview to tell you guys the big
Congrats,
news.
Josh.
I like it. I like it. And
kind of a depressing twist with the mom thing, but awesome on the kittens.
Josh, you can name them Abby and Jacob.
Oh my God.
The kids are in charge. The kids are in charge.
Yeah, don't let the kids watch the movie.
Don't let the kids watch the movie.
No, well,
please.
we got puppies before, and my son named one of the puppies Chief Brody from Jaws. So that's got to tell you where my kids are at. So
wow, love it.
I was a kid when Jaws at M.O.M on Martha's Vineyard, because it was filmed on Martha's Vineyard, and Jaws was kept in the fake mechanical Jaws was kept in this big harbor, not big, but big for me. I was a kid. So I remember walking by there to go fishing, jigging for squid at night and being like, is that thing going to come to life?
How cool
it was
is
the
that?
big Jaws thing in M.O.M show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
So I think we got one more question. And Josh, I'm going to let you do the honors, because you want to ask a little something special.
So I totally forgot that I had another question lined up. Look at that.
Yeah.
There was a question I missed too that I might want to ask before this one. There was so you had done, I don't watch TV anymore, but you had produced and written a lot of paranormal stuff. And I'm a pretty big paranormal fan. My brother was in New England Paranormal Group, and he helps run Paracon every year here. Has that influenced you at all making the film?
I would say absolutely, because first of all, I have litters of brothers and sisters, and I'm on the younger side of the family. I have 8 sisters and 7 brothers. And just like everyone likes to sit around and tell, camp, fireside camp stories, ghost stories, where everyone gets scared. They would do that to us, but they would take it to the nth degree, where they actually told us trolls have kidnapped your brother and he's missing a leg. And I'd be like, shit, we got to help him. So from a very young age, it was very hard for me to tell what was real, what was not. So I became obsessed with it. I've done a lot of paranormal shows. I did factor-faked paranormal files for Sci-Fi. I did Ghosts of Shepherdstown, Ghosts of Morgan City. And I have to say that I am obsessed with the paranormal. I'm a skeptic, which is why I make a good showrunner, which means I'm like, well, how else could this possibly have happened? Could there be a light refraction from that hit that affected? Is there some kind of condensation on the camera lens? So obviously I like to poke holes in it in order to prove that it could be true. So on Ghosts of Shepherdstown, which we did with, if you're a paranormal buff, then you must know Nick Groff. Okay.
I've heard the name, but I don't recall.
So he was one of our hosts. He did Ghost Hunters for years. He was one of our hosts, and we used to have in West Virginia, because we film, when we film a ghost show, you're filming it for 3 or 4 months. We used to have horror Thursdays, which turned into which was just the whole cast and crew coming and watching horror movies at the production rental. And then it turned into Horror Tuesdays. And then I think it turned into Horror Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So 3 times a week after we wrapped, we'd all go watch horror films together. And that just fed me, because I could see all these people who I respected, who were on our crew or cast, who had such interesting things to say. And it became a test of like, somebody from the sound department had to bring a horror film to the table or a found footage film to the table. But before they did it, they had to find out how much the film was made for, when it was released, how much it made box office. And then when the film ended, we'd all talk about it and we'd have to guess what it was. So it very much informed my appreciation of how much we thought films were made for and how much they weren't actually made for, or vice versa. So I would say that very much have been kind of, obsessed with what's real, what's not. And that comes to the human psyche as well, right? Where you're not sure if someone's crazy or not crazy. They're not sure if they're crazy or not crazy. And that, the dichotomy of that is very similar, I think, to paranormal. What's real, what's not real.
It's true.
You should come to Rhode Island. As it's the tiniest little state, but Taps was the next town over. So that's where I recognize that name. If he was on the Taps, they had a place right in Warwick, which is the next town over from me. I'm in Coventry. And I mean, the layers of supernatural here are pretty deep. H.P. Lovecraft was from here, and we have a big Edgar Allan Poe following here. And of course, Taps was here. The Johnson brothers, who are big in the paranormal, they are from Rhode Island. Just a slew of other guys. And I mean, I could go on and on, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. And I could go on and on with you too. I mean, there's a lot of history there too. There's a lot of war. There is a lot of paranormal residue, shall I say, but that's there, that I do believe in a lot of it, actually. Yeah.
PVD actually stands for Providence Horror. So, Rhode Island is key for that. But that was a side note. The big question was, at the end of the film, there was another mom watching her video, and her son walks in and he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, nothing," and turns it off. And I'm like, are we looking at a sequel?
Josh, you played that mother perfectly.
Oh yeah.
I thought I was watching the film again.
I'm a parent. I have experience.
That was actually shot, you guys, from exactly right here. That was my living room. That was right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You recognize the fridge? That was
Yes.
right
Yes. Yep.
there. Yep. Found
That's
footage.
awesome.
Keep it as real as you can.
That's awesome.
I did not plan on a sequel, but we have gotten that question quite a bit. But if you guys have ideas for sequels, please email me.
Starring Joshua in the leading role.
It's Jacob all grown up.
I like it.
Even the beard can't disguise his wrath.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Bailey, you could be in the sequel with me, and I won't cut out any of your stuff. How about that?
Well, we'll be watching footage of you as a youth, and it'll be actually Bailey playing you as.
There we go.
Full circle.
Yeah, I'll be built in.
So, Bailey, I'll start with you. Is there anything you have coming up, or anything that you want to kind of like tell people to check out, or anything?
I'm in the midst of finishing up, as I feel like all of us did during pandemic. I worked with I have a writing partner who, very different adventure than this, a sort of comedic web series world that we shot and messed around with this summer. That it's a big departure from Jacob. So if you want to see a very, very different side of me, that'll be on social media and easily found coming this January, February.
Nice.
Do you want to plug your social medias right now so they can find it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My Instagram is bailed out. So as if one is bailed out of something. It's a fun play on Bailey Edwards that my sisters came up with.
And Tucia, do you have anything that you'd like to promote, or just continue promoting the movie?
I would love to continue promoting the movie. It's very sad that we had a lot of, we had the Hollywood Reporter and the LA Times and a lot of kind of big name just outside of the horror circuit critics coming to our premiere. And unfortunately, because of COVID, it was canceled. So although I'm thrilled, and probably more thrilled than my investors are, about tapping into the horror circuit and the horror family, we were not able to break into mainstream yet. So I would like to continue promoting the film. I'm working on, I work in documentary television for the most part. That's how I pay my bills and keep my lights on. So I'm doing, I'm the showrunner for Intervention, which is a long-term documentary series on A&E Network. I have a couple other scripts that I wrote that won awards, but until I wrap up with my actual day paying gigs, I won't get back to it. I have a screenplay I wrote called Half Breed that is also more paranormal than Mom, but has a lot to do with well, let's just say it placed as one of the winners for the Page International Screenwriting Awards. And I'd love to get back to that, but I have to wrap out my television shows first. It's Mom Movie on Instagram. So it's M.O.M movie for Instagram. And I think it's Moms of Monsters for Twitter. And I can't remember what it is for Facebook. Do you know, Bailey?
I think with Facebook, you can just plug in Mothers of Monsters and it'll come up.
Yeah.
And just tell everyone you know about it. Share it wide and far.
Yes.
I love it when people get it. That's why I love that you guys got it. I really do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll take it.
Yeah, Josh, that's one of Josh's biggest compliments of the year right there. That's made it 2020. I get something. Yes. Yeah. So thank you guys again for coming on and spending this time with us. This has been great. And it's been a pleasure kind of picking your brains about this film and just hearing all the thought and, passion that went into making this project. So I really appreciate that and want to thank you guys for that.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us on. We're really grateful for that.
It's so much fun to chat about, and to chat about with people who want to talk about it is amazing.
Awesome.
It's the horror fam. It's hashtag horror fam, man.
That's right.
We love
it.
Hit me up for that sequel, man.
I will. Well, hey, thanks for listening to PVD Horror, the podcast. Big shout out to Tucia and also Bailey. It was really cool of them to come on. Make sure you check out our podcast, rate us, review us. Follow us on all the social medias, the YouTube, the Instagram, the Twitter, and TikTok, and all the other ones that we're on. PVD Horror.
Fucking
How's that?
Plays Jacob, the main protagonist or antagonist. You guys have another hour? Hey, what's up? This is Dave. Oh God, no.
Oh God, no.
Today we're sitting down with
Tostitos.
Tostitos. If you guys want to go, I'll just talk to myself.
What?
I talked to the dudes that created Bum Fights like a long time ago. I actually did a song for them. You remember Bling Bling, the bum?
No.
Were they actually like homeless
You
people?
said you watch Bum Fights.
It was so long ago, dude. I don't remember.
The dude that goes bling bling, he goes bling. The guy that goes bling bling hides a crack pipe in his collar. Only the bling bling.
Oh my God.
So I made a rap song as Bling Bling, and they were gonna use it for Bum Fights 4, but it got canceled. Like, it was legit fire.
So back in the day, bum fights wasn't like a big thing.
I
They
love
had
how you're schooling
VHS
us on
tapes.
bum fights now.
They had this dude, he was like the crocodile hunter, and he was called the Bum Hunter. He was like going in LA, and like, look at this big one. Oh my goodness gracious.
Oh my God.